Public health aspects of low-frequency noise from wind turbine factories, or WTFs. One of the 5 pillars in the Public Health Act is the precautionary principle. Denmark's Ministry of Environmental Protection, or the DEPA, wanted to tighten regulations on wind turbine noise to protect neighbors from increased infranoise from increasingly larger wind turbines. This was based on advice from the Danish medical profession in May 2011. Vestas, the wind turbine factory director Ditlev Engel, wrote to the DEPA minister Karen Ellefsen in June of 2011, saying it is simply not technically possible to limit infrasound, and increased distance requirements for housing cannot be met, while we maintain a satisfactory business result for the investor. Clear speak. DEPA relented and opted instead for less stringent standards that have likely been copied by other countries, like Norway. It's absolutely true what Vestas says, that it is practically impossible to reduce infranoise from penetrating into houses near wind turbines. A 10 Hz sound wave in air has a length of 34 meters, and it would require a 17-meter thick wall to completely dampen the noise. For all practical reasons, it is distance, and once again, distance that matters. This is a picture of 2 Vestas 136 turbines of the 14 in the WTF on Frøya. The Ministry of the Environment does not have infrasound in its guidelines T 1442, nor is it measured in or outside of homes. Infrasound is called vibrations in the industry. And for the wind turbine industry, there is a calculated, not measurable threshold value of 45 decibel A, L, day, evening, night, annual average that is used. Sound propagation in Norway with fjords, mountains, and lakes is different from Denmark, where these values were set. Wind turbine blades in motion in the peripheral field of vision can activate the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal HPA axis and give persistently increased adrenaline and cortisol excretion. People do not adapt to noise from WTFs. On the contrary, you become sensitized and tolerate less over time, and the noise is then experienced as 4 decibels higher than it actually is. Environmental impact assessments, or EIAs, for WTF concessions in Norway have omitted health impact assessments, HISs, and thereby been left to sidestep the precautionary principle regarding the safety for human health. The owners of large industrial products have not been required to show that their products are safe for humans, solely for fauna and flora. A health impact assessment has not been carried out on the sum of the loads from audible noise, infranoise or vibrations, high intense lights flashing at night from collision warning beacons. They have 2000 candela, it's quite bright. Shadows cast from and sights of moving turbine blades, bisphenol A spread in nature and drinking water, not to mention the PFAS, or the eternal chemicals. Ahead of wind turbine concessions that NVE has provided. NVE is the Norwegian Water and Energy Commission. Wind power concessions in Norway have been granted without these conditions having been assessed for their impact by health professionals. This is despite the fact that impact assessment and regulations on environmentally oriented health protection set requirements for it. NVE only relates to 45 decibels L day, evening, night, and 8 hours of shadow cast per year as limited for permitted pollution from WTFs. People around the world describe living near a WTF as living in a fairground area, with continuous noise, vibrations, flashing lights, and huge spinning surfaces. Many would prefer to move, but loss of their property value prevents them, and they will not talk about it to minimize any depreciation. Current health consequences are linked to lack of sleep, heart rhythm disturbances, increased blood pressure, stress, and depression. Wind power developers pay Norwegian residents to live with health-damaging noise, and people have given up the possibility to later press charges about the noise. If they were to sell their properties, new owners cannot complain either. And the OED, that's the Oil and Energy Department, describes this as a private law agreement. This we wrote in an op-ed in the Norwegian newspaper VG to the health minister at the time, and have not heard anything about it. This is a study from Ontario, Canada, conducted by Carmen Krogh et al. And it is a study of 67 households with health issues within 10 kilometers from a wind turbine factory in Ontario, Canada, 2020. In the pie diagram here, in the largest red area, 31 had contemplated vacating their homes. 28% in the green area had vacated their homes. The orange area with 4 households had intended to remain, and 4 had already preemptively vacated their home. Those are the percentages of the numbers. That's within 10 kilometers from a wind turbine factory in Ontario, Canada. There's a Swedish study performed in 2021 of the socio-economic cost of wind turbines. The analysis of the negative capitalization of wind turbines and property values in Sweden over the last 10 years gave them conclusions that clearly show that a relatively significant capitalization, and that this capitalization is relatively local within 8 kilometers of the wind power plant. So people living near wind turbine factories lose value on their property. Until late 2018, I did not consider WTF noise to be a problem for public health. And whenever anyone spoke about it, I'd just blow it off and say, yeah, I hear what you say, and yeah, don't worry about it. And I considered claims about it to be hyperbole. And however, I was aware that as a municipal chief medical officer, I would be responsible for abating noise pollution in Frøya starting in 2020. So I studied literature and articles available on the matter, and a very steep learning curve ensued. And this gave me a new and quite different view of the issue. I acquired advanced sound recording equipment from New Zealand, from Atkinson Rapley, the Samscribe 2 for 0-point measurements in and outside of homes on Frøya. And I started with sound measurements on Hitra, on the neighbor island, which had had a WTF since 2004. It was to be expanded with twice the number of turbines and with blades twice the sweep area, 5.3 versus 10.7 decade, or 1,000 square meters, in 2019. This is a picture of the equipment. 2-channel, indoor, the red microphone, and outdoor, the blue microphone, simultaneous sound recordings, and a GPS sensor. And this is to show that the tolerances are quite well, plus minus 0.5 decibels from 0.5 to 20,000 hertz. It's calibrated with a tone signal at 1 kilohertz, 94 decibels. And the WAV files are GPS time and location locked and can be used in court. You can't alter them without showing that they've been altered. That is what happened then and there. This is a picture of Hitra, seen southwards from the island of Sula. With Hitra has all of its 50 turbines erected. This was looking over Frøya, and this is in May 2020. The wind turbine factory in Frøya had been started, but wasn't quite erected yet. This is the Kjærlighetsstien, or Path of Love, in Frøya, seen in 2019 at sunset. This is what it looks like 3 years later, when we had over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I see 13 turbines. One's missing there. It's to the left of the picture, I guess. They're 180 meters tall. This is a wide-angle lens. So this is a picture of 6 of the Vestas 136 turbines, the distance 800 meters, and a sound recording. You can adjust it up and down. If you have a sound pressure meter, you can adjust it to 45 decibels. This is what you're supposed to be able to deal with outside your house on an average. That means when the wind isn't blowing, you have to put up with quite a bit more sound. Again, this is a figured value. It's practically not measurable. An annual average is difficult to acquire from individual sites. So these are computer modulations, and they draw out a map and say, okay, these houses are within the guidelines. They pass. However, if it does turn out that there you have a higher sound level, they were paid off instead of being bought out. This is a spectrogram of the sound that you're hearing. Wind is from the east-southeast, 6 meters per second at 16 degrees Celsius plus, and 1010 hectopascal. This is sort of bring you up to speed on the sound spectrum. Infrasound is considered up to 16 hertz when we can start hearing it. Animals can hear it lower frequency. Whales communicate over hundreds of kilometers in the water. Our human audible sound is from 16 up to 20,000 for children. It gets lower as we get older. And ultrasound is everything above 20,000 hertz, what dolphins and bats use for echolation or navigation. This picture is to show the difference between decibel A, decibel C, and decibel Z, or linear. Decibel A is on the green line. C weighted is the red line, and the unweighted or linear or Z is the blue line. Now, the decibel A was evolved from back in the 30s, Fletcher-Munson curves, and that has to do with telephone transmission. It's not necessary to transmit a large amount of low frequency, high energy sound. But you see here, at 20 hertz, there is about a 50 decibel difference between real and measured sound level at 20 hertz. You see that here. A 50 decibel difference means that only 100 1,000th of the sound energy is measured and taken into account at 20 hertz. 50 decibels is 5 bells, and this is a logarithmic scale, so that's why it has 5 zeros behind it. So, sound power level versus rotor diameter. This is just to show that the sound pressure level, SPL, increases as the rotor diameter or the blade diameter increases. They give a larger sweep area, increased low frequency noise. This is what happens when the blade passes in front of the turbine tower. There is a compression of air molecules, and then a subsequent decompression. Compression, decompression, as the sound wave is generated. If the blades are in synchrony, that they pass evenly in front of the turbine tower, you're going to have even more sound energy being propagated in all directions. Low frequency noise or sound is carried over long distances versus high frequency sound, which is more directional. This graph shows the sound pattern from wind turbines when there is 0 RPM, the green line. There's no turbine blade passing in front of the tower. The red line shows the wind turbine rotating at 20 RPM. That means there's a blade passing every second. There are 3 blades, 20 RPM times 60 divided in a minute, 60 passings a minute. That will give you a ground frequency of 1 hertz, and then you see the harmonics, 2 hertz, 3 hertz, 4 hertz upwards. The wind speed increases to 10 meters per second. You get a quicker rotation, and the basic tone there is approximately 1.2, or you can divide it and figure out it's. But anyway, notice that the harmonics have a much higher energy level than the basic tone does. That's a phenomena that's quite interesting. Sound measurements in the home of a healthy person in the 40s who was sensitive to noise from ventilation systems and building on Hitra. This I performed in December 2019, right after, or a couple of months after, Hitra 2 had been erected with 26 turbines with a double sweep area. The person had lived the past 9 years without sleeping problems. 10 kilometers from the Hitra 1 wind turbine factory, consisting of 24 smaller wind turbines, and is positively disposed to wind power. Problems arose when 26 new turbines with a doubling of their sweep area from 5.3 to 10.7 decade were put into operation in the autumn of 2019. I go outdoors at night looking for the large ocean freighters that are not there. I do not sleep several nights in a row when there is a downwind and have to seek refuge as far away as possible, the person is quoted. This is a sound graph from outside the house. It's made as a sound graph by fast Frøya or FFT transformation of linear sound recorded 2 meters from the outside wall. You see 3 hertz, 6 hertz, 9 hertz, 12 hertz, 15, up to 21. And the decibel linear or decibel Z goes from 32 up to 104 in 8 decibel increments. This is the graph of the simultaneous sound recording from the bedroom. And notice the difference here. The peak to trough compression, decompression, and the sound wave, rapid. The harmonics upwards. They're two different turbines on different rotation speeds, so we don't know quite get the basic tone. It's probably here around there. It looks like it is 0.5% or 0.6 hertz about. The harmonics aren't so large, but this phenomenon which occurs in the bedroom will show in a notice the 34 decibel difference in the peak to trough. It's quite a lot of sound energy. Wind speed there was 7 meters per second at 1 degree Celsius. The wind came from the east. I used the program SIGVIEW 6 to analyze the sound recordings. The spectrogram here shows 3 axes. It goes from 0.16 up to 22 hertz along here, and it lasts about 10 minutes. It cuts it a little bit short during the analysis. And it goes up to 110 decibels, just above the pillow. 110 decibel linear, low frequency noise. So there's a lot of energy being generated inside the bedroom here. This is what it looks, the simultaneous recording on the outside of the house. There's a lot of sound energy there, also 117 decibel. You compare it to the bedroom. The peaks, the harmonics make it look like stacks of hay. And see, it's quite uniform inside the house. Here's a varying, it could be more wind here that varies. And this is probably a reflection from a nearby building. That gives this reflection here. The bedroom acts as a resonance box, or a bedroom boom box. This is another case here. Health problems in a highly sensitive 60-year-old who lives 8.5 kilometers from the Hitra wind turbine factory. Recording made in January 2022. Feels like it rumbles over the bed and trembles in the body. A washing machine whirring in the distance. Exhausted in the morning. The person had atrial fibrillation that occurred after the Hitra 2 wind turbine factory was expanded with 26 Vestas V117. The person had a normal heart rhythm while away from the home, but reacquired disabling atrial fibrillation 5 times after returning home, which had to be treated with electroconversion. Atrial fibrillation still occurs after ablation, that is heart surgery, which the person had in 2021. They go in and burn off some of the nerves generating the heart arrhythmia. And the fibrillation disappears after a few days when the person leaves the island. Now, this is the sound graph outside, 45 decibels linear. And this is the sound graph in the bedroom. And there's the red line, 45 decibels linear. And there's a 23 decibel peak to trough at 2 hertz. Notice the amount of sound energy here above 45 decibel compared to the outside. See, there's a attenuation of low frequency energy generated in the bedroom over the pillow. The wind was blowing there 4 meters per second. It was minus 2 degrees Celsius, 1,000 hectopascals, and there was an 8-kilometer downwind, 8.5-kilometer downwind from the wind turbine factory. These are single cases. It tells us nothing about is there any connection to the wind turbine factory or not. These are single cases. Tell me a story. Tell me another story. But are there causal connections to the wind turbine factory? That's a question that's important to investigate. Is there a basis for studies of people who have recently acquired health problems after the erection of a wind turbine factory or having moved near one? Also very plausible questions to be addressed. My findings of those who live up to 10 kilometers from a wind turbine factory and who develop new health problems are people who describe themselves highly sensitive. And approximately 20% of the population is considered to be highly sensitive. Now, this isn't a test you can do or any blood test you can take. This is something that is shown academically, that there is a difference in how the nerves use neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, noradrenaline. And these can vary. This can be sensitive to touch, to light, to smell, to sound, or to human interaction. So are these people the canaries in a coal mine? We don't know. But approximately 20% of the population. And this is an interesting number we'll be coming back to here a little bit further on in the presentation. This is a map of the area in Finland near the Satakunta and Northeast Bothnia wind turbine factories. This is a study conducted from 2016 to 2019 by SYTe, which is this medical group of environmental health in Finland. This is a pilot study consisting of slightly over 200 persons. The yellow here depicts a 15-kilometer zone, which is important in the study. And this is depicted in the graph here. Notice the one on the left is people living within 5 kilometers from wind turbine factories. The middle, 5 to 10 kilometers, intermediate zone, and those living above 15 kilometers away. The gray areas here show new symptoms. The next color shows light ailments. You see here, above 15 kilometers, it's quite a big difference. There's not much of a difference between here within 5 kilometers and between 5 and 10 kilometers. But here you see a big difference, more than 15 kilometers away. The orange one shows harmful or reduced ability to work and serious health problems. Within here, the red. 3% here, approximately 11-12% here, serious health problems. The group with reduced ability to work and serious health problems within 5 kilometers is about 22%. A little bit less, 19% in the 5 to 10, and about 8% in the above 15 kilometers. What's interesting is that only 5% of the respondents related their new health problems to the new WTFs on the questionnaire. It wasn't open, it wasn't connected to the wind turbine factor, it was their own health assessment. Even with a small number of people in the pilot study, it does not indicate that the group with health problems have thought they would get sick from living near wind turbines, SYTe concluded in 2019. There's a reference here, the number 5, further back, a hyperlink. You can go in and study the pilot study. Is it a coincidence that there was a tripling of serious health problems from 3 to 10% and reduced ability to work from 8 to 22% among those who live less than 5 kilometers from the wind turbine factory compared to those who live 15 kilometers away? Are the highly sensitive person those who get afflicted from living near wind turbine factories? The 22% here we see here, are those the 22% that happen to be highly sensitive persons? We don't know. We don't know. This is a pilot study. I know of no similar ones that have been conducted after this. It has its weaknesses. There are only 205. And any study, to have any good validity, has to be able to be reproduced. Or the question is it solely the imagination and fear of wind turbine factories and people that strikes them with the so-called wind turbine syndrome, which sociologist Simon Chapman chose to frame people in distress living near wind turbine factories? The Ministry of Oil and Energy, or OED in Norway, refers the noise problems around Turbine wind turbine factory to another Finnish study from 2020. Now, this is a very interesting study I'll get you into here. In the study, neighbors to a wind turbine factory with recently acquired health problems were invited to listen to 10-minute audio recordings of the wind turbines in a sound laboratory. When they could not indicate whether or not it was wind turbine sound that they were listening to, and also did not get an elevated pulse, rise in blood pressure, and increased galvanic skin conductance, that is, sweating in their hands, like in a lie detector, the study concluded that infranoise from WTFs does not have a harmful effect on human health, and that their health problems possibly were self-inflicted by negative attitudes. Reference 6 there, you can go and read the study. The design of the Finnish listening study and OED's interpretation of the results could be compared to a study where the smoking of a couple of cigarettes concludes that tobacco smoking does not cause COPD, but could possibly be caused by negative thoughts and worrying about the detrimental effects smoking has on your health. You can go in there and read a comment I had in an op-ed in Stavanger Aftenblad. It's quite worrisome that the OED, without health expertise, bases its assumptions of health problems from the Turbine WTF on a study with a 10-minute long listening session to wind turbine sound recordings, and not on the actual living conditions of neighbors exposed to continuous WTF sound when the wind blows. The burden of proof for health problems does not lie with the neighbors of WTFs, neither as it was for asbestos or hexavalent chromium in drinking water exposed persons. Hexavalent chromium was the issue with Irene Brokovich, which became more, we got to hear more about in the movie. Maybe they should make a movie about wind turbine sound. There might be some out there. The WT industry has not shown that their products, which are increasingly larger wind turbines, do not harm the health of those who live near WTFs. Lack of or inadequate research should constitute a clear stop signal for development. Instead, it is used as a green light for initiation. This is an interesting study that shines the light on what might be one of the culprits. We look beyond high sensitive persons that might be affected. How does it affect us in the long term? And this is titled Impairment of the Endothelium and Disorder of Microcirculations in Humans and Animals Exposed to Infrasound Due to Irregular Mechanotransduction. That was conducted by Ursula Maria Berut-Steik and published in the Journal of Biosciences and Medicines in June 2023. I'll run you through it here. Mechanotransduction signaling networks play a critical role in vital cellular processes and are the decisive physiological mechanism for an adequate nitric oxide release, main responsible for the autoregulation of vessels. Disturbed endothelial integrity originating like from chronic oxidative stress and or mechanic oscillatory stress. Oscillatory stress, this is infrasound, which is oscillatory mechanical stress. This leads to disturbance of vasomotion as well as a disequilibrium of redox systems, recognized as main causes for the development of chronic inflammation disease such as atherosclerosis and corresponding secondary illnesses, possibly cancer. Back here again, the bedroom, the first case. Large amount of energy in sound waves with a 34 decibel steep peak to trough at 8 hertz. That is a 5,000-fold rapid differential in air molecule compression and decompression, which is going to act on the whole body. This isn't any 10-minute listening test. This is something you're exposed to when the wind blows. And how does this affect the endothelium in small blood vessels? We don't know. We have a study that shows that there is something going on, but there are no long-term studies. Here is a boo-boo, an illustration by Kristina Fjelldavli. Boo is a threatened night eagle on Frøya. They hunt at night in about the same altitude as the wind turbine blades are rotating. The municipal chief medical officers are responsible for noise pollution in their community since 2020, and they face the challenge alone in smaller municipalities and have asked for studies and guidelines on WTF noise pollution. The Ministry of Health and Care has so far not wished to meet with the Public Health Committee in Motvind Norge to discuss the issue. Here is an interesting aspect as to Norway's adherence to the regulations of the European Union. Norway isn't a member, but wants to be best in class in following their regulations. The noise guidelines in Norway violate the EU Strategic Environmental Assessment Directive. Norway has based its environmental impact assessments for WTF noise on Danish flat and dampening landscape, and not on Norwegian nature with hard rock mountains, lakes, and valleys that carry noise further than in Denmark. There are court rulings in Belgium and in the Netherlands against their noise guidelines, which are not adapted to national conditions as required by the investigation regulations. Does anyone think that the Norwegian noise guidelines comply with the SAA directive? I don't. No, do they fulfill the legal requirements in the EU? I'm not a lawyer, but when Belgium and the Netherlands got nailed for it, I don't think that makes Norway any more immune for the same to happen to them. Here is a picture of a cow and the newly elected CEO of the NVE, Norwegian Water and Energy Commission. In a newspaper interview, he was asked, "What is your loss of welfare from that wind turbine over there?" This is in Egersund, where Lisa Svalestad's depreciation of house value was considerable. 40% it was estimated at. It's quite a lot of money. When the advantages are greater than the disadvantages. Advantages for whom and who gets the disadvantages. An article in September 2019. This is the a gang from Nessadalen in Frøya, was sort of the Motvind had its first annual convention in the autumn of 2019. This was taken in July 2021. We had been run over and the wind turbine factory had been erected in Frøya. That's another discussion. But thank you for attention. And here are the references. It's included on the slide. You can go in and hyperlink. Thank you. And good luck with your further acquiring of knowledge of infrasound. I hope this has given you a little bit input and something to some food for thought. Once again, thank you for listening.